right, our essential question for this lesson is how do we know that we need to cross multiply to solve an equation? What are some of the key ideas to remember when we cross multiply? So there's going to be a lot of vocabulary in here. I didn't list them up at the top, but we'll define them as we go. So the first is a ratio. Okay, that uses division to compare two quantities or numbers. Okay, so quantities means numbers. Okay, so I have some examples. There's 3 different ways that you can write this ratio. Okay, so this is abstract, and then I'll show you with some numbers. So you can say A to B, or 3 to 5, for example, or 3 to 5 with a colon in the middle, or 3 to 5 as a fraction. Okay, this is the one that we are going to use more often, since it allows us to do some other comparisons and calculations and things later on. But you could also write, if you're just talking about a ratio and a comparison of 2 numbers, these other 2 formats are acceptable. Here's another additional note. Make sure that you write them in simplest form. So if I have 2 to 4 like that, that should be rewritten as 1 to 2, just like you would do if it was a fraction. 2 over 4 is the same as 1 over 2. And here's an example. So at a car wash fundraiser, 18 9th grade students and 14 10th grade students worked the first shift. So we want to find the ratio of 9th grade students to 10th grade students. So anytime you're using ratios and comparisons, it helps to use the words to get it set up. So we're comparing 9th to 10th. Okay, 9th grade students to 10th grade students. So 18 9th grade students and 14 10th grade students. And then don't forget we need to simplify. So you would divide the top and bottom by the same number, in this case 2, and you get 9 over 7. So the ratio of 9th grade students to 10th grade students is 9 to 7. Now we're going to find the ratio of 9th grade students to all students. Okay. So that would be 9th grade students compared to all students. So again, there are 18 9th grade students, and then you have to add the 2 numbers that are given to get all the students. So that'd be 32, 18 plus 14. And again, simplify. So you can divide the top by 2 and the bottom by 2. We get 9 over 16. And that's as simplified as it's going to get. So the ratio of 9th grade students to all students is 9 to 16. So that's just talking about ratios. We're now going to take it to the next step and look at proportions. So a proportion states that 2 ratios are equal. So this is where we're going to get into our solving proportions. So it would look something like this, where you have A over B equals C over D. And this is one of the reasons why we use the fraction form. Here's a couple of other side notes. B cannot be the number 0. It can be any other number, but not 0. And D cannot equal 0. Okay, remember, these are set up like fractions, and you cannot have a 0 in the denominator of a fraction. So those 2 variables cannot be 0. The cross product property. Okay, this is a property that states that the cross products of a proportion are equal. So if you say that 2 fractions or ratios are equal to each other, then their cross products must also be equal to each other. So what it means by cross products is that you multiply D with A to get AD. So that gives you AD. Equal sign is still in the middle. Then you multiply B times C, it's going across. So BC times C would equal A times D. And that's what we have over here on the side. Note, we only do the cross products when there is an equal sign in the middle. Only when there is an equal sign in the middle. That's the only time you do these cross products. So here's an example of two ratios that are equal. And if you look at the cross products, 8 times 3 is 24. 4 times 6 is 24. 24 does equal 24. So the cross products of a proportion are equal. So here's an example where we're now going to solve a proportion using the idea of cross products. First of all, you have to look and notice that there are two ratios. Okay, this is a ratio here. This is a ratio here. They're both set up as fractions. And those two are equal to each other. So two ratios that are equal to each other. So we're working with a proportion. So we're going to use the cross product to solve for x. So when we do that, everything in the denominator gets multiplied by the opposite numerator. So we are going to multiply 3 times x minus 6. Make sure you have the parentheses there so you don't forget you have to distribute the 3. Okay, so we have to have those parentheses. The whole thing is going to get multiplied by 3. On the other side, x times 2 will go on the right-hand side. So the first step, use cross product property. Now, it's just a regular solving problem like we've been doing the past few days. Next step will be to distribute to get rid of the parentheses. So we are going to distribute the 3. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times the minus 6 will be minus 18. Again, careful with your positives and negatives. Equal to 2x. Okay, now notice we have x's on both sides of the equal sign, so we need to get the x on one side. I'm going to subtract the 3x to get the variable on one side. So minus the 3x, minus the 3x. So I have negative 18 on the left. 2 minus 3 gives me a negative 1x on the right. So now we divide by negative 1. Since there's a negative in front of the x, that's like a negative 1. Divide both sides. So on the left we have 18. The right, just regular x. So x is equal to 18. So let's go ahead and check our solution. You start with the original equation. Plug in the proposed answer. So 3 over 18 equals 2 over 18 minus 6. Simplify each side separately. So 3 over 18, if I divide by 3, I get 1/6. On the right-hand side, 2 over, I have to subtract the 18 minus 6, so that gives me 12. Divide by 2, so 1/6 equals 1/6, and it did work. So 18 is my solution. So here's an example to try. Note that we have some expressions in the denominators where you're adding and subtracting variables and numbers together, so you have to be careful when you're doing the cross product. This will go on the left page of your notebook, across to opposite from the notes, and we will check this next class.